Hey guys, today we are going to talk about a really unique lens that is the Canon RF 28-70 f2 lens. Alright, so first up, let's talk about the build quality of this lens. Basically, if you've used any RF-L lens, then this feels similar to that. The only difference is obviously this lens is a lot bigger than a lot of the other RF lenses, especially considering it's a standard zoom range. Now, one thing I did take note of is that the zoom dial on the lens was a lot harder to turn than any other RF lens that I've used before. So I don't know if that's specific to the 28-70 or if it's just because I got a rental unit and there's been more wear and tear on the unit. Also, you should be taking into consideration if size is important, size and weight, because this lens is pretty big and pretty heavy. So if it's not something that you want to be lugging around all day, then definitely take that into consideration. Personally, I didn't have an issue with the weight. And then I'm just going to lump autofocus into build quality. This lens utilizes a USM motor technology for the autofocus, so it's not the same as a nano USM, which you find in the RF 70-200 and the RF 24-105 f4 lens. It's a specific type of USM motor technology that's designed to move heavy glass in a quick manner. So what you get is a little bit noisier of an autofocus relative to the nano USM, but if you are comparing it to something like the I think it's called the STM autofocus technology that you find in the standard RF 50 to 1.8 lens, then it's a lot quieter than that. The only thing you'd have to stay away from in terms of audio quality is mounting a shotgun mic directly above your camera, because you will pick up some of that autofocus noise. I'm not going to get specific about the internal build quality of this lens, but you should know that the 19 elements and all of the different coatings that they used in this lens work really well together in making a, I would say, well-balanced lens when it comes to, flare and vignetting and overall rendering. I definitely noticed that this lens did a great job when I was shooting into the sun or some kind of other light source. The type of flare that comes from the lens, I would say, is definitely pleasing, and the coatings in the lens do a really good job in controlling the flare and keeping that contrast and that color in your photo when you are shooting into a light source. Similarly, I think that Canon did a great job with controlling vignetting in this lens too. And that'll be nice if you are utilizing this lens for astrophotography. I do think that this could be a good choice for that type of work. So I would say one bigger disadvantage for this lens, putting size and weight aside because we already know it's big and heavy, is that it's not strong in the area of minimum focus distance. And specifically if you are trying to shoot at 70 millimeters, wide open, you can definitely expect to lose a lot of contrast and detail in your image. Obviously, it does help to stop the lens down, but you should know that that's one area where you'll have to kind of compromise with this lens. All right, so let's talk about the overall rendering of the 28-70 f2 lens. Honestly, I have to say I was super surprised when I started using this lens, because I've been so used to using primes and expecting that that's where I'm going to kind of get that unique rendering or those like unique characteristics in a lens. And I never considered that I would kind of get that feeling from a standard zoom lens. I would say that Canon did an amazing job in balancing the sharpness and overall resolving power of the lens with the rendering of the out of focus areas. You'll notice that the transition from the focus point to the background and the foreground in your photo is really smooth. So it really kind of gives your photo that three-dimensional feeling, which to me is really pleasing. Another cool thing about this lens is that from about 28 to 50 millimeters, it's super sharp. But then as you get closer to 70 millimeters, you lose some of that sharpness. But for me, that's perfect because I love shooting those portraits at 70 millimeters wide open. And if I'm doing portraits that are closer to the subject, I don't like when the lens is super sharp, because that just means that I'm gonna have to do a lot more retouching in the post-editing process. And before I wrap this video up, I do want to say that it is worth noting that the rendering throughout the whole range is really, really unique. I found myself really loving how the image looked wide open at 28 millimeters, just as much as it did at 70 millimeters. All right, so I'm just going to finish up by talking about the value of the lens. I would say that the price at $3,000 is a pretty good deal when you consider how much the other RF lenses are. So if you're looking at the, RF 85 millimeter, that's I believe that's a $2,700 lens, and the RF 50 millimeter is around $2,300. So considering the rendering and how well this lens performs wide open, I would say that it's a great value at $3,000 if you're replacing, potentially 4 primes, 28, 35, 50, and almost 85 millimeters. So I think it's a great value. I really do, and I think that it'll last you a really long time. Also, if this is going to be your first RF lens, you're going to be able to shoot with this lens for a really long time without potentially having to get any other lenses, just because it is really versatile. The only thing I would do is probably also pick up the RF 50 millimeter 1.8 in case, your 28 to 70 fails for some reason during a paid session. Then you have like a general lens for backup. All right, so in my next video, I'm going to be talking about if this lens actually replaced my RF primes. I have the RF 50 millimeter 1.2 and the RF 85 millimeter 1.2. I'm going to be comparing some of the characteristics from the 28 to 70 to those lenses. So if that's something that you want to see, definitely let me know in the comments section below and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching today. I will talk to you guys later.